Welcome to today's Global Connections television program. I'm Bill Miller. The main purpose of this show is to promote a discussion of major international issues such as war and peace, economic and social development, climate change, and human rights that impact people worldwide. New knowledge will inspire, involve, and motivate all of us to better deal with these challenges and to help create a better world. Today's program is going to focus upon a UN group that is working to empower women and to promote gender equality. We'll be back in just a moment to talk about these and other important issues. Welcome back to our program. Today we're taking a look at the United Nations Women Organization within the UN system and what it's doing to empower women and to promote gender equality, because women play a critical role in every society, in every country on planet Earth. My guest today is an expert on UN women and these issues. My guest today is Ms. Lakshmi Puri. Ms. Puri is an Assistant Secretary General at the United Nations, and she is also Deputy Executive Director of UN Women. Ms. Puri, welcome to today's Global Connections program.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
I appreciate you being with me today. Let's get right into it. What is UN Women? When was it formed? Why was it formed? What is its basic mission?
You know, you began, Bill, by saying that this program is about international issues like war and peace, development, human rights, and climate change, among others. And indeed, for each one of these projects of humanity, the most important project of humanity, which is gender equality and women's empowerment in this 21st century, is a critical enabler and a beneficiary. So, thank you for having us, and that's what defines UN Women. UN Women is a 21st century, the only 21st century UN organization created to promote gender equality and help this project of humanity forge forward. And we are the UN's international single integrated UN organization, which is working in 5 different ways to promote gender equality. One is advocacy, global advocacy on behalf of women and girls and their issues. The other is pushing the frontiers of norms and standards and international agreements and commitments, political commitments on gender equality and women's empowerment, and translating those at the global, regional, national, and local levels into laws, policies, and measures. We are working on the ground in 93 countries, but of course we have a universal mandate. We are also really charged with working in partnership with civil society, but also fostering women's movement and really mobilizing youth as well as other game changers like faith-based groups and men and boys to create a movement, of a solidarity movement for gender equality, because gender equality essentially is about creating a new normal, a social new normal, a political new normal, an economic new normal. So we work in all sectors. And then it is about creating the knowledge base and the evidence, gathering the evidence. What is happening about gender equality issues on the ground? Where are women and girls? What's happening in different areas? So collecting the data, gender statistics, but also building on that to say what are the policies that work best. Government policies, but also social policies, and what should different actors and stakeholders be doing, including the private sector. We also do partnerships with the private sector because they need to change too. So it's really a multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder, multidisciplinary mandate that UN Women have. The biggest mandate really that any organization has to support the whole of society and half of humanity. And then we also focus on 5 key areas, which is ending violence against women, women's economic empowerment, enhancing the voice, participation and leadership of women in decision making at all levels and in all sectors, and making sure that governance, planning and budgeting is gender responsive, and advancing the women, peace and security agenda.
Which is no small task.
Absolutely.
It is quite a very ambitious but a very important agenda. Now our viewers can go to www.unwomen.org to get more information on what you're doing and what we're talking about today and some of the things we perhaps will not get a chance to talk about. Let's focus on thinking about the Sustainable Development Goals for a moment. 2015 was a banner year for the United Nations in many ways, with the climate accords in December of 2015 in Paris, but also the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted by the 193 member states of the United Nations in New York. And these are 17 very logical, practical, measurable goals to focus on for the next 15 years with the development agenda for 2030, to eliminate poverty, to eliminate hunger, to promote sustainable development. And of course, number 5 is to focus on empowering women. I'm sure the other 16 goals of the 17 I mentioned are of great importance to you, and they tie together. They're not
Absolutely.
in silos, but you've already started to focus on how you're concentrating on number 5. But you and I had talked a couple of weeks ago at a conference, and you had 10 I's, the letter I, as to how to accomplish the Sustainable Development Goals, especially to focus on number 5. And as you mentioned, it is a collective effort. You're talking about civil society, non-governmental organizations, faith-based groups, service clubs such as Rotary, Kiwanis, Lions. You're talking about the 193 governments, the private sector. They all have a role to play. But tell us, the viewers, about the 10 I's on how they all can work together to accomplish, especially goal number 5, but the other 16 also.
So last year was a historic year for the commitment of the international community, not only in launching the first ever universal, transformative, comprehensive, as you said, tied together sustainable development agenda, but also in adopting what we call a historic gender equality compact. Within that, but also in the climate negotiations, in the climate agreement, in women, peace and security related compact that was agreed in the Security Council, and in the adoption of very strong commitments in the context of 20 years of Beijing Platform for Action, which is the gold standard for gender equality commitments adopted at the 4th World Conference for Women. So now Agenda 2030. Gender equality and women's empowerment has been put front and center of this Agenda 2030 for sustainable development. And the first affirmation is that without gender equality, you cannot achieve any of the goals of the 17 goals of this agenda. Goal 5, SDG 5, is in itself a transformative and comprehensive goal. It turns gender equality into a sustainable development objective and goal. That's the transformation and seismic change. And then it's about achieving gender equality, not just promoting gender equality. So there is a determinism about it. And it is also about empowering all women and girls, which means it's all encompassing, leaving no woman and girl behind. And then it has these 6 targets of ending violence against women, ending all forms of discrimination in law and practice, ending harmful practices like child marriage and FGM and trafficking, and unpaid care, valuing and reducing and redistributing and provisioning unpaid care work of women, which is transformative. Then we also have universal access to sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights, again a fundamental issue, and equal parity in public and leadership in public, political and economic life. And of course, all of these together with the economic empowerment aspects as a means of implementation, economic rights and access, ownership and control over resources, productive resources and assets, land and property rights, for example. So, and finance, access to finance. So all of this together constitutes really a gender compact that the international community has entered into, and 11 other SDGs have gender sensitive targets and indicators. Now you asked me about the how of now implementing, localizing this global compact on the ground. And indeed the 10 I's that we have outlined relate to the eye of inspiration, because all governments, all stakeholders that you have identified, and I want to include of course the youth, must be inspired, take inspiration from this global compact and try to then translate that into different aspects of where they work and what they do. It cannot be, also the eye of indivisibility. You cannot cherry pick one target or one goal. It has to be the whole thing taken together, and gender must be, of course, integrated. That's the third eye. Gender must be integrated into all aspects of the implementation of this agenda, and it has been also said in Agenda 2030 that it will be so. So the other eye is of implementation. So these norms have to be implemented into and translated into and downloaded into laws, policies and measures. And special measures are really important, because this is about acceleration. You can't wait another 50 years or 70 years to achieve gender parity in political life or economic life, because that's how it will take if we go at this snail's pace that we have been going. So we need to really accelerate, and acceleration requires special measures. It's not business as usual or governance or investment as usual. That brings me to the eye of investment, because in significantly increased transformative financing of the gender equality project is what is called for. So the eye of investment in every aspect of the gender equality project is an imperative. And then the eye of inclusion, because as you said, all stakeholders must contribute. The private sector has to do it, the civil society has to do it, but governments, of course, as the duty bearers, have the prime responsibility. Every citizen must join the movement. So the eye of inclusion, but also the eye of inclusion in the sense of women in their different intersectionalities. By that I mean that those who are disabled, those who are in rural areas, those who are poor, in urban slums, in different circumstances of compounded disadvantage, have to be supported, especially reached out, as the agenda demands that you reach out to the farthest first and take everyone forward. So that is the inclusion part, and civil society and the role of women's movement is really important. So they have to be engaged by governments, by the international community also in driving this agenda. Eye of information, data, gender statistics, there is a big gap that needs to be bridged, and so that eye has to really be again invested in, and there has to be a deliberate effort to measure what we treasure, because the gender statistics will enable you to measure and monitor progress, but also drive policy formulation. You know, are we going in the right direction? Otherwise you lose the plot. Then you have the eye of innovation. Gender equality and women's empowerment itself is innovation, social, political and economic innovation. But at the same time, we have to, in order to accelerate, in order to do it in every way, we really need to find innovative ways of achieving, reaching that goal. And that means that we have to use innovative modalities, innovative partnerships, innovative investments, use technologies, and also make women and girls part of that innovation and agents of innovation. So that's the eye of innovation. And then we must very importantly also focus on the eye of institutions. Gender equality institutions, and of course UN Women is one of them, but at the regional level, at the national level, at the local level, we have to create, we have to re-energize, we have to empower and authorize, because many of these institutions that are there lack the authority, the convening power, the resources. So we have to do all of that to strengthen support for these and the value of these institutions and influence of these institutions, and they and other institutions that are of a transversal nature must be engendered. So you know, whether it's government institutions or it's private sector institutions or civil society, every institution, and of course civil society as well, because you know there are many civil society institutions that deal with human rights or climate or you know development. They must all be engendered. So this is about the institution, eye of institution. And last but not least, impact, the eye of impact. So we must all work together to make sure that all of this, all the nine eyes come together to deliver impact and real change in the lives of the 3.5 billion women and girls on this planet.
Well, you're watching Global Connections Television, which is a privately financed, independently produced program. The opinions expressed on Global Connections Television are solely those of the moderator and his guest. Our viewers are invited to check out the website at www.globalconnectionstelevision.com to view previous shows. If you're interested in distributing our shows through PBS, community access television, educational institutions, a website, or any other media outlets, please go to our website for more information. Global Connections Television is provided as a public service at no cost. Today we're looking at UN Women and what it's doing to help women around the world to promote gender equality and to empower women. My guest today is an expert on UN Women. My guest today is Ms. Lakshmi Puri. Ms. Puri is the Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations, and she is Deputy Executive Director of UN Women. Those 10 eyes are really excellent. The implementation, the how-to phase, how can you take these very lofty, laudable goals put them into action, and achieve them within 15 years. And as we saw with the old Millennium Development Goals, many of the goals were achievable, but these probably are even more achievable if everybody works at them. What do you see, though, of all of the, I know there are a lot of inputs coming into this, there are a lot of challenges, but is there one major challenge that you see to, as you move forward to achieve these goals? Is it financial, or is there one really big obstacle? I'm sure there are many obstacles, but is there one that stands out?
I think it's very difficult to say one, but if you permit me, I want to say three.
Oh, sure, please. We can expand it. Not a problem.
Right. So the first one, I think, is the ownership of this agenda now. That those at the highest level, this was adopted, as you said, and now it's for the political leaderships everywhere to own this and say, not to say that we are already doing all this, no, but to say that we have to really adapt everything we are doing to fit into this global commitment that, or compact, that we have reached. So to really, lift whatever you are doing to that level of commitment. So one is this ownership issue, this and the political commitment that was expressed. It should not be allowed to fade, and it must remain consistent. And therefore, and particularly, as you said, we need to make sure that within a generation we can really see, we can make some of the issues like gender equality, gender inequality and discrimination and violence against women history. So that's one. The second is, I think, in the case of gender equality, for example, I think it's really important that other areas are when we take action on climate change, when we take an action on poverty eradication, when we take action on energy, water and sanitation, that we keep very clearly the gender mainstreaming, aspect in view. That's a big challenge. This is a commitment that's been made, but that must be translated on the ground. And the third thing is financing, and it's linked. You have to invest in what you value. You must first value, you must then make sure that it's reflected in all policy, and then you must really invest in it. But globally, I mean, beyond the SDGs, the biggest challenge for the Gender Equality Compact implementation is to overcome the structural barriers of centuries, and the cultural contestation, the political contestations that surround the feminist agenda. So that's something that we have been trying to unpack through through our advocacy programs and our movement building efforts.
Exactly. Now, a lot of people are interested in what you're doing. I know Anne Hathaway, Nicole Kidman, two very famous actors or actresses, however you want to call them, are involved with UN Women, and there are many others who are involved too to help getting your message out. Why is that important, and why do these famous people work with you they can get cameras, they can have media following them all over the place, but why do people like that, George Clooney, who was one of the Secretary General's messengers for peace, or you have Angelina Jolie working with the refugees, UN High Commission for Refugees, I believe. But why did these people want to lend their names and their time to these laudable goals that you're working on?
Well, because I think, first of all, they believe in them, and because the cause is worth it. And certainly in the case of Angelina, in the case of our goodwill ambassadors that you mentioned, but also Emma Watson, who is another Goodwill ambassador for ours, and then there are others like Matt Damon, who is a he for she champion. And then we also have South Asian Goodwill ambassadors like Farhan Akhtar and Sania Mirza, the tennis player. So, you know, the point is for us, we have sought out these celebrities who have a big influence in changing stereotypes and mindsets, to engage them in this cause, because their messages resonate far and wide. And that's the power of advocacy through people who are not in the gender equality business per se, but who use the pulpits they have to spread the message of gender equality. So we are really very much into using these advocacy campaigns that we have, and then of course translating them on the ground into programs.
Well, Ms. Lakshmi Puri, Deputy Director of UN Women, we have, as always, we're battling the clock as usual.
But can I mention the advocacy campaigns?
We have to, I'm sorry we have to run, but we would encourage our folks, our viewers, to go to unwomen.org, also to Google Security Council Resolution 1325, CEDAW, the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, because these are so very vitally important. But I want to thank you so very much for a very interesting and a very informative program.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to present UN Women's mission.
My pleasure, and we'll do it again, and we'll
Thank
talk
you.
about the others. Very good. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. Please join us again for future programs for the next episode. I'm Bill Miller. Thanks for watching.